the category that I won a Pulitzer in is called commentary, which just means columns, and they can submit 10 of them. My editor wisely submitted only 7 because he knew that people judging this thing are sick and tired of reading. They might 6 of them were humor columns, or humorous. One was a very serious column I wrote about the death of my mother, who committed suicide in 1984. Excuse me, 1987. And largely in response to the depression she felt when my dad died, which was in 1984. And my mother had always battled depression, and after my dad died, she was lost, and she just didn't, she could not rebound, and she moved around the country and lived for a while with my brother and then with me, and she didn't know what to do, and I called the column Lost in America. And the column was about how when your parents are getting older, you start to act as though you're their parent. I started to lecture my mother, come out, you have to get past that dad is dead, you have to decide what you're going to do, you have to, and she wasn't, doing that, but I thought, that I could tell her to do it. And then she sent me and my brother's birthday cards months before our birthdays. They just said, "I love you," and then the next day, she committed suicide, and I wrote a column about that, how guilty I felt for having thought that I knew what she was going through, and that I could tell her, how to handle this devastating loss she'd suffered. My dad was a wonderful guy, and he was her rock. He was her only real, the only thing that kept her stable through much of her life. And I wasn't even sure that I was going to print that. I wrote it just to deal with the guilt I felt more than anything else. And my editor liked it, and he wanted me to, and so he printed it. And I was glad I did, because and I still get to this day, that was 12 years ago, I still get mail about that column from people in the situation where one of their parents has died, and they have to decide what to do about the other one. And
it's hard for people to grieve, and I suspect that it's helpful to them to read something. When my father died 3 years ago, I too, because I publish not a column but a lengthy piece every month, wrote a thing for my mother about the death of my father, and he was literally an All-American. He was an All-American football player back in the 30s, and he lived like that. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to sort of say to her that even his children could perceive that he was indeed this kind of classic American type. And I didn't intend to publish it in our book news, but I wrote it, I think, for her and probably for me, if I were really truthful. Mm. But then I did. And as you say, it produced more mail, more comments, just got bushels of letters from people who really were affected by it, or it spoke to them about their own loss that they hadn't maybe been able to articulate. And I suspect that's exactly what happened. And especially maybe when somebody commits suicide, it's even harder for people, to even want to talk about it, let alone think about what lay behind it. That was, I imagine, a wonderful thing you did for a lot of people, well, even if you did it for yourself.
I think I really did it for me, but yeah, in retrospect, I was very glad I did write about it.
Well, moving towards Big Trouble, I got up this morning and listened to the Today Show just so I could terrify myself before I came in to interview you this afternoon. And I heard you say that the storyline was prompted by a game that your teenage son plays.
Yeah, my son, a few years ago, when he was 16, he was involved in this elaborate game that they play in South Florida in the high schools. Basically, one kid organizes it, and all the other kids pay him $10 a piece. And then he assigns each one of them in secret the name of another kid they're supposed to kill. It's called Killer. And you kill a person by squirting him with a squirt gun in the presence of one witness, but only one witness. So you can't just in school walk up and squirt them. It has to be, you have to catch the person alone, which means...
So it's a real hit, in other words.
It's a hit, right. So usually that means, and the witness is there to confirm you squirted the person. When you squirt that person, he's out of the game, and when the first round is gone, then they all get new victims. Meanwhile, you're being stalked by somebody else, so you don't ever know who's after you. And sometimes it's somebody from another school you don't even know. So the kids love this game, and of course the authorities hate it. And then when it's all over, the one person who survives it all gets a bunch of money is how it works.
Just like South Florida.
It's just like South Florida. So when he's playing that game, I was trying to think about a novel, and I thought the first idea that came to my mind is what would happen, because he and I were talking about, you know, how it's kind of dangerous to be creeping around at night, especially in South Florida, with a gun, or with what appears to be a gun, when there are a lot of people in South Florida with real guns.
According to what I hear.
A lot of people have guns. A lot of people have guns. So I thought, what would happen if some teenage kids showed up at a house to squirt a girl who lived there, at the same time that real hitmen showed up to kill the girl's, in this case, stepfather.
The embezzler.
The embezzler. And that really was the first idea I had for a plot. And then other elements sort of, I knew I wanted to have. Around the same time, the federal authorities arrested some guys in a bar in Hialeah. And it turned out the bar was a front for the Russian mafia. And these guys were conspiring to sell weapons to the federal agents who were undercover agents. And one of them was a nuclear submarine. And I thought, that's not possible.
Purchased from where?
From Russia.
Oh, okay, a Russian nuclear submarine.
Russian nuclear submarine. And it just seemed not possible. But according to the testimony at the hearings and everything, the federal agents were quite confident that these people were going to be able to provide not only a nuclear submarine, but possibly nuclear missiles. I'm thinking, you can buy nuclear missiles in a bar in Miami? You know, it's like that. Okay, I'll include that. And so that, I wanted to work that idea in there somehow, that there'd be a bar and there would be Russians selling nuclear weapons. Then the whole backdrop of this is an incredibly corrupt city, Miami, where people can be paid to vote in elections, and the people running the government are getting indicted regularly, and there's payoffs and kickbacks and the typical Miami things, all of which, I mean, that's not even a little tiny exaggeration. I also wanted to include wildlife, the toad. This is a poisonous toad.
The enemy toad.
The enemy toad. There's a toad and a dog. I've always loved dogs. The toad and the dog both play a major role in the book. And the toad is a kind of toad that really exists. And when I first moved to Miami, I encountered one my first night there. They're called Bufo marinus. They're huge, ugly, brown toads that are fearless because they secrete a very powerful hallucinogenic toxin, which, if a dog bites it, will kill the dog or make it very sick. And people even can be killed by this. And the reason people get killed by them is that it's hallucinogenic, this toxin. Sometimes there are people who lick these toads to get
Oh, gross.
and they die sometimes. And my feeling is anybody who licks a toad deserves to die. But so I included that. And then the one last thing I included as a major plot element was Miami International Airport. The various characters come together, starting with this hitman and these squirt gun things, sets in motion a chain of events, and involves this bar with selling nuclear weapons. And it all ends up at Miami International Airport. And I have a thing about Miami. I fly all the time, and I view it as kind of a hellhole. Very badly run, just scary, intimidating, zoo-like place. And also you don't get the feeling it's the best run, most secure facility in the world. So I wrote this whole long sequence at the end that makes it out to be not a secure place. And at the time, I didn't think it was, I thought I was exaggerating. And then, 2 weeks before this book came out, the authorities arrest 58 people working for American Airlines in the airport for putting heroin and weapons on the planes. Airport workers, not smugglers, but people working with the airline, putting heroin and putting hand grenades on the airplanes.
You didn't have to beat security. They were security.